Hey, what's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in. So we're going to be making a quick video on the differences between the Sur Ron X and the Talaria Sting. Before we get into it, please subscribe to the channel if you like the content, hit that thumbs up button, and also ring that notification bell for future notifications of my videos. By doing those three things, guys, you help me keep putting content out like this. All right, so let's talk about the differences. So the Sur Ron X out of the box is putting out 5,000 watts of power, while the Talaria Sting out of the box is putting 6,000 watts of power out. All right, so that's 1,000 watts in power, and you can definitely tell the difference when you ride these bikes. The batteries that come with these bikes, on the Sur Ron X, you get a 32 amp hour battery, and the battery that comes with the Talaria Sting is a 38 amp hour battery. So you definitely get some more juice in the Talaria Sting battery. Now, as far as the battery power cables go, you have two cables on the Sur Ron X, and honestly, those can be really finicky. I've heard a lot of people having issues with those cables. And on the Talaria Sting, you actually have this 2-in-1 power cable, which it just plugs in. It's nice and secure. I really like how they did that. So instead of having to worry about those two wires, you're just worrying about that nice solid plug, and really that's not going to give you any problems. You also have a locking mechanism in here too, so when you put the battery in, it actually pushes up against the battery and keeps it from moving. And the weight differs quite a bit. The Sur Ron X with the battery in it weighs about 110 pounds, while the Talaria Sting weighs 138 pounds with the battery in it. So you're talking about a difference of 28 pounds. So the Talaria Sting is definitely quite a bit heavier than the Sur Ron X, and you can definitely feel it as soon as you sit on the bike. As far as the front suspension goes, you have a couple different options, but these bikes both have the D&M suspension, and I actually took the decals off the front suspension on the Sur Ron X, and I left them on the Talaria Sting for now. So as you can see, they come with the D&M Volcano suspension. I mean, not bad. They're definitely better than the RSTs. And as far as the rear suspension goes, they usually both come with Fast Ace, but on my Sur Ron X, this one actually has a D&M suspension. And that could be because this is actually the XX edition. So maybe that's why there's difference in the suspension. But on the rear there, you can see it's a Fast Ace. And like I said, usually it's Fast Ace on all of them as far as the rear suspension goes, but my Sur Ron has the D&M rear suspension. Now, as far as the transmission goes for these bikes, the Sur Ron X has a primary belt, which then goes off to a chain. And the Talaria Sting actually comes with a gearbox, which is in an oil bath. So the thing that you have to keep in mind for that, you do have to perform oil changes on this bike. I think it's like every 1,000 kilometers. And it also goes off to a secondary transmission, which is the chain. So both bikes have the secondary chain, but the Talaria Sting has the gearbox. And honestly, I think I like that better, to be honest. It's definitely a lot quieter than the Sur Ron is with that primary belt. And we'll have to see how the gearbox holds up. But honestly, I like the gearbox because the gearbox is enclosed and you don't have to worry about like mud and things getting in there and maybe snapping the belt like it does on the Sur Ron. So I definitely like the gearbox. All right, now as far as the rims go on these bikes, they both feature 19-inch rims, but there is a big difference as far as the Talaria Sting goes. So instead of having a 70-100 tire all the way around like the Sur Ron X does, there's a 70-100 in the front, but on the rear, you're gonna get an 80-100 tire. So it's definitely quite a bit wider than the Sur Ron X tire. And while we're on that, we can actually talk about the swing arm. The swing arm is much wider on the Talaria Sting compared to the Sur Ron. And that's gonna make a huge difference as far as putting a bigger rim, bigger tire on the back, which you can't really do on the Sur Ron X. You're really limited as far as that goes. But that wider swing arm on the Talaria Sting is gonna allow you to put a much bigger tire and rim on the back. I'm not really sure how big you can go, and you can also see the width of the bike as well is quite a bit wider on the Talaria compared to on the Sur Ron. So you can see how thin the Sur Ron is. So as far as the width goes on these bikes, the Talaria is much wider. And it definitely feels a lot more solid when you're sitting on the bike. And to me, it just feels like better quality. As far as the ride quality goes, with the thickness of the bikes, you definitely get a much better ride quality, in my opinion, out of the Talaria Sting, because you get more to wrap your knees or your legs around when you have a much smaller bike in the Sur Ron X. While we're talking about like the riding stance and stuff, let's go over the seats. That's something a lot of people don't bring up as far as the Talaria Sting goes. The seat on the Sur Ron X is absolutely terrible. There's not a lot of room as far as being able to move around while you're riding. And it's very tough. It's a very tough seat. Now with this seat, it's a little bit different. It's a little softer than what they used to come with. And like I said, this is the XX. And I believe this is a 2022 seat with the Sur Ron logo on it. But as far as the area to sit on, it's basically the same as it was before. Just not very comfortable. And honestly, the only way to really improve that is to put like a lift kit on there or an extension to kind of move that seat up and back. While the Talaria Sting seat is very comfortable, it's a very long seat, so you have a lot of room to move back and forward on it, depending on your riding style or riding situation. And believe it or not, that makes a huge difference as far as ride quality goes, being able to move up and move back on the seat when you need to. If you look, you can actually see the seat lengths. It's definitely a lot longer with the Talaria Sting, a lot more room, and the seat is definitely softer and more comfortable in my opinion. So that's huge on the Talaria Sting. Now as far as the height goes, you definitely have a taller ride with the Talaria Sting. And I love that because I'm 6'2", 260 pounds, and the Sur Ron is just too short for me, to be honest. And I didn't really pay attention too much to that until I got on the Talaria Sting, and this thing is just a totally different ride. It sits a lot higher, and you can see the angle on the seat, and that makes a huge difference for me and probably a lot of other tall riders. So if you're a tall rider out there, honestly, I say go with the Talaria Sting. You'll definitely be more comfortable on the bike. And like I said before, you are able to put like extensions and seat risers on the Sur Ron X. But those kits are, you know, 100, 150 bucks. And you don't really want to have to do that. So honestly, right out of the box, Talaria Sting, nice and tall, nice comfortable ride for tall riders. So as far as both bikes go, it comes with the same stock handlebar, the same stock light. And I will be replacing those in the future, probably with a grit shift blinder. Get a nice bright headlight on there. A lot of the same parts on these bikes. The fender is actually a little bit different on the D&M fork with the Talaria Sting. It's a little more pointy and a little more gaudy as far as the size goes. And I'm actually looking to get another Sur Ron fender for it, because this one's a little smaller, a little less gaudy, a little less like pointy and stuff, a little less extreme, I guess. So I kind of want to go with that one on the Talaria Sting. All right, so as far as the display goes, you have your typical Sur Ron display here with the Eco and Sport button, your horn. This will also tell you how long you've traveled, your odometer, things like that, and also your speed. So a very basic display. As far as changing your brake regen, you cannot do it on the display. You have to do it with the cable that they include with the bike. So you're gonna plug in the adapter cable, and then you do some pumps with the brakes and things like that to change the regen. So it's kind of a process. The throttle is a lot smoother, in my opinion, on the Sur Ron X. A lot less resistive, but honestly, it's not too bad. The brakes are about the same too on the two bikes. We'll go over to the Talaria Sting's display. You have more of an egg rider display here. You can see things like your voltage, power meter. So instead of looking down at the battery display while you're riding on the Sur Ron, you actually do it right on the display on the Talaria Sting. You can also change your regen levels with the up and the down buttons there. You can also go into the settings menu and change a bunch of different settings as far as like kilometers or miles per hour, things like that. You can also change your gearing ratio, right in the menu there. So really cool to have that at your fingertips while you're riding. You also have your horn. Now, as far as the throttle goes, you have more of a resistive throttle. And when I say that, that just means as far as like pulling throttle back, you're definitely going to get more resistance. It's definitely harder to pull. It's not hard to pull, but you definitely get more resistance out of the throttle instead of like the free-flowing one on the Sur Ron X. Honestly, I prefer the Talaria Sting's throttle. Now, as far as purchasing these bikes, I purchased my Sur Ron X at Luna-Cycle. Now, as far as the Talaria Sting, I purchased mine from eBikeZilla, and let me tell you, they're awesome, and I will purchase all my e-bikes that I can from them from here on out. They're just a super cool team. Any issues, any questions that I've had, they've been super responsive, and honestly, you really don't get that much anymore, but whenever I send them an email, I'm getting an email right back, and I really appreciate them, so thank you again. As far as the overall value of these bikes, to be honest, the Talaria Sting, and I didn't really expect this, but it makes my Sur Ron feel like a cheap toy. It just feels more solidly built. The frame is just absolutely beefy, and it just looks badass. They really did a great job with this. So as far as the story goes, two guys that used to work with Sur Ron left Sur Ron and formed Talaria, and basically they just took all the things that needed to be fixed on the Sur Ron, did it with the Talaria Sting. So it's kind of like a Sur Ron 2.0 to be honest, but it's really a completely different bike. So you can kind of compare them, but you really can't, because this thing just feels like a real bike. I mean, this thing is super solid. The weight difference definitely makes it feel a lot better quality, and you have more substance underneath you. As far as the Sur Ron goes, I honestly never really had a problem until I sat on the Talaria Sting. So just keep that in mind. I think honestly the best bang for your buck is going to be the Talaria Sting, the new kid on the block. And if you have any questions about these bikes or you disagree with any of my points that I made, please drop a comment below, and I'd love to discuss some of these points with you. All right, and if you want to see more content out of these bikes, please let me know. But until next time, thank you for watching. Peace out.